wants to lumber around on a heavy bike, especially not when the trails get really tight and twisty and lots of technical sections? Historically, two strokes have definitely been lighter than four strokes by a significant margin, as much as 20 to 25 pounds. That gap is being narrowed quite a bit today with all the advancements that have happened in the four-stroke market. I wish that a lot of those advancements could actually get placed into the two strokes, and hopefully they will soon, because the gap has become quite narrow, even though the two-stroke will still feel a little bit lighter because of less rotating mass. In one of the previous episodes, we talked about the extra weight that the four-stroke has. I want to back off a little bit on that and just soften it, because a lot of these four-stroke bikes are getting very, very light. Specifically the 350 that we've been riding, it's very light and it feels very light. When we've ridden it, it feels like you're not on a big heavy lumbering machine, which is one of the reasons I really like that 350. I honestly think, guys, if you're going to get into the off-road world, I think the 350 is probably the perfect bike if you're going to go four-stroke, because that sucker, it felt really similar as far as the way it handled to these two strokes, which we were really excited about.
Yeah, and we can only compare it versus the other four strokes that we have in our arsenal, or our friends, essentially.
450s
and stuff.
We've got Yamahas, we've got Hondas, and a Kawasaki, right, that we're comparing this against, and all 450s. But that one felt really light.
Yeah,
I've got a question for you. Who was it that said a 450 four-stroke would be a good off-road machine? Now I understand some of you guys are probably 250 pounds and maybe you can handle the four-stroke, but for the rest of us that are anywhere between the 125 to 190 range, I honestly think a 450 four-stroke is too much bike, especially to be doing off-road stuff. They're just too heavy, there's too much power, too much wearing you out. I can't tell you how many times people tell me when they move off of their four-stroke, they feel like they have so much more control, they're having a better time, they're not getting so worn out. 450 four-strokes are awesome for Supercross if you're Ryan Dungey, Ryan Villapoto, or Eli Tomac, or Justin Barcia, but we're not them, and we're not doing that kind of riding.
Like the 450s, and I've said this, and so if you're like around our weight and size, which is in the 160 range, the 450s are fantastic. They have unreal amount of power everywhere. They grip everywhere. They're actually even pretty well balanced. It's just after a while that mass amount of power just starts to wear on you, and then it starts to even feel more heavier.
They tend to want to kind of stand up in corners.
They want to stand up in corners, right? But with these newer bikes, and the better they get and the more balanced, and obviously they're dropping the weight. I know that Kawasaki just mentioned that their KX 450 lost like 6.6 pounds or something like that, which is fantastic.
And KTM dropped almost 10 off their 450.
Right, and so
they're into two-stroke. They're into two-stroke weight.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal.
Let me spend just a second and rant at the bike manufacturers, specifically KTM. If you can knock almost 10 pounds off your 450 four-stroke, and you can knock, 6 or 7 pounds off your 250 four-stroke, why can't you put some of that same technology and same weight-saving ideas into your two-stroke lineup as well? Hopefully you'll do that next year. And I hope the rest of the bike manufacturers are listening, specifically Yamaha, because now they're doing their 250, their YZ250X. Let's get the weight down on these two strokes. If you can cut weight off four-stroke bikes through frame and whatever else that you're doing, you can cut some weight off the two strokes too. Let's be fair.
But like when we were riding the XC, the 350, because that's probably what we spent the most time on. The 450, my brother has a CRF 450, and I really like that bike. It's really well balanced. It just has good power. It's predictable, but I can feel the weight more on that 450. But on this 350, I got on it for the first time, and I was blown away. You can feel a little bit of engine braking. The only places I could kind of feel the weight is when I was going on a downhill, and my back, kind of when you're kind of going down like a really twisty section and you kind of start compressing that suspension, I could feel the weight kind of leaning me a little bit more into the corners where my two-stroke wouldn't do that. It felt still a little more nimble, but overall it's that that's a non-issue because it wasn't significant.
As I talk to more and more people, I feel like engine braking is kind of like suspension. What I mean by that is everybody's got a different opinion. What one person thinks is great, somebody else is literally going to hate. So as far as engine braking goes, the 4-strokes do have a little bit more engine braking just by the way that they're designed. Now this can come in handy sometimes, and sometimes it'll be a little bit of a nuisance. Personally, I don't like it when I'm coming into a corner, but some of the 4-stroke engine braking is a little bit nice going down hills. That is, if it's not too much that it starts to lock up that rear wheel in really loose, like shale conditions or something like that. So it's a little bit of a toss-up. It's a mixed bag there. You can say the 4-stroke engine braking is a positive. You could also say it's a little bit of a negative. It just comes down to what you like. In the testing that I've done, I've actually come to like the engine braking a little bit. Now, a lot of the 2-stroke purists are going to be pissed off when I say this, but some of the time the engine braking is pretty nice. I don't necessarily like it so much when I'm coming into a corner. It's just a preference thing for me. But going down hills, it was kind of nice for me because I could go down some pretty steep stuff and I never even had to cover my rear brake. I was just, feathering my front brake, and the engine braking was just enough. It wasn't so much, and I think that might be on a 450. I think the engine braking might be a little bit too much, and you could end up kind of locking up your rear wheel. But with the gearing on that XC and with the amount of engine braking that it had, it felt like it was kind of almost an advantage. I'll go ahead and say so. Point for the 4-stroke there on the engine braking for hill descents.
Yeah, and going back to that is with the CRF 450 that I've spent some considerable amount of time on is it would do that. It would lock up when you're going down, but it's not geared for off-road, so it's not really a fair. And he hasn't geared or changed any of the gearing or anything like that. And he doesn't have a recluse, and so going downhill, I'd have to kind of stay actually on the gas to keep that, keep the compression plus keep that rolling. So I would lock it up because then I have no electric start or anything, and you're going down a really steep hill. You're just going to try to bump start it, which with the 4-stroke is tough unless you can pump it up to like second or third. So yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. That puts part 5 of this series in the books. Stay tuned for part 6. Hopefully that will be coming out in the coming weeks, and we may just leave it there on part 6. We've covered a lot with 6 episodes. We'll just kind of have to see and move on to some other topics. So thanks for tuning in.